The House on Pest Street. The Tale by Leonora Carrington. It all began at number 40 on Pest Street. The houses there, black and reddish, seemed as though they had mysteriously risen from the ashes of the Great Fire of London. The building across from my window, with only a few tufts of ivy clinging to it, had the blackened, lifeless look of a dwelling cursed by plague, scorched by smoke and flames. This wasn't at all how I had imagined New York. The heat was unbearable, so suffocating that, after a short walk, my heart would pound uncontrollably. I decided to spend my days seated by the window, staring at the house across the street, occasionally wetting my sweat-drenched face with a damp cloth. The light on Pest Street was never strong. A haze of smoke always hung in the air, blurring the view with a dull mist. Yet I could still study the house across the way in detail, thanks to my excellent eyesight. For days, I tried to spot any sign of movement. There was none. Eventually, I grew so accustomed to the emptiness that I began dressing carelessly in front of my open window, doing my breathing exercises in the heavy air of Pest Street. My lungs must have grown as black as the houses themselves. One afternoon, after washing my hair, I sat outside on the tiny stone balcony to let it dry. Resting my head on my knees, I idly watched an ambush bug feasting on a dead spider. Through the veil of my long hair, I noticed a dark shape in the sky, too silent to be an airplane. I brushed my hair aside just in time to see a large raven swoop down and land on the balcony opposite mine. It perched on the balustrade, peered into the empty window, then tucked its head beneath its wing as if searching for lice. Moments later, the double doors creaked open. A woman stepped out, carrying a platter filled with bones. She dumped them on the ground. The raven croaked in gratitude and leapt down to devour its revolting meal. The woman had long, jet-black hair. She used it like a rag to wipe the platter clean. Then she looked directly at me, smiling in the friendliest manner. I smiled back and waved a towel. She seemed delighted. Throwing back her head playfully, she greeted me with a regal gesture, as though she were a queen. "Do you happen to have some old meat you don't need?" she called out. "What?" I shouted back, wondering if I'd heard wrong. "Rotten meat. Spoiled meat." I didn't answer. Surely she was joking. "If you could bring me some for the weekend," she continued, "I'd be immensely grateful." She disappeared into the dark balcony, and the raven took flight. The next morning, curiosity got the better of me. I bought a large cut of meat, left it on my balcony wrapped in newspaper, and waited. Soon, the stench grew unbearable. I was forced to do my daily chores with a clothespin clamped to my nose. By Thursday night, the meat had changed color. Swatting away clouds of angry flies, I shoved it into a mesh bag and carried it across the street. Finding the entrance was difficult. The door was hidden beneath a cascade of ivy, as though no one had entered or left in years. I pulled the old-fashioned bell cord, but tugged too hard, and the handle snapped off in my hand. Frustrated, I pounded on the door. It gave way, releasing a wave of stench so foul it nearly made me faint. The dimly lit hall was paneled with carved wood. Slowly, the woman descended, carrying a torch. "How do you do? How do you do?" she whispered ceremoniously. I was struck by her appearance. She wore a gorgeous, antique silk gown of shimmering green. But her skin was entirely white, glistening as though dusted with thousands of tiny stars. "You're very kind," she continued, taking my arm with her gleaming hand. "You cannot imagine how happy my poor rabbits will be." We climbed the stairs. She moved carefully as if afraid. At the top, we entered a chamber adorned with Baroque furniture upholstered in crimson. The floor was littered with bones and animal skulls. "We rarely have visitors," the woman smiled. "So they've all gone into hiding." She let out a low whistle, and to my horror, dozens upon dozens of white rabbits crept cautiously from every corner. Their large pink eyes locked on her. "Come, my darlings, come," she cooed, reaching into my bag. She pulled out a hunk of rotten flesh and tossed it to them. I recoiled in disgust as the rabbits swarmed the meat, tearing at it like wolves with their goat-like teeth. "One grows attached to them," she said calmly. Each has its own little habits. You'd be surprised how individualistic rabbits can be. The sight turned my stomach. Of course, she added cheerfully. We eat some of them, too. My husband makes the most delicious rabbit stew on Saturday nights. I turned at a sudden movement in the shadows. There, sitting stiffly in a chair, was a man. His skin glimmered like hers, as though wrapped in Christmas tinsel. He wore a red robe, and a large rabbit sat on his knee, gnawing a piece of meat. That's my husband, she explained with a sly smile. The children like to call him Lazarus. At that name, the man turned his face toward us. His eyes were covered with a bandage. Bettel, he said weakly, you know I've forbidden you from bringing visitors here. Oh, Lazarus, don't start. You can't deny me a little company. It's been over 20 years since I've seen a new face. Besides, she brought food for the rabbits. The woman gestured for me to stay by her side. Won't you stay with us? Suddenly, terror seized me. I wanted nothing more than to escape these dreadful, shimmering people and their carnivorous, white rabbits. I think I should leave, I stammered. The man let out a chilling laugh. The rabbit on his lap bolted away in fear. The woman leaned so close that her nauseating breath nearly suffocated me. Don't you want to stay? To be like us? In 7 years, your skin will shine like the stars. 7 years, and you'll bear the sacred disease of the Bible, leprosy. I fled in horror. At the doorway, I glanced back one last time. The woman raised her hand in farewell. As she waved, her fingers crumbled away, falling like shooting stars to the ground. The Child in the Jar. The Tale by Guadalupe Dueñas. We moved from house to house, so often I never understood why. But the real concern was always the same. Where to keep her? It wouldn't do to leave her in the basement. That would have upset my father. The dining room was inconvenient, and displaying her in the living room was unthinkable. Guests would have gone mad with questions. So, after much deliberation, she was always placed in our bedroom. Ours, because 7 of us girls shared it. My father was a practical man. He had traveled widely and, inspired by ship cabins, built a clever system of bunk beds that saved space and gave each of us her own cot. The important thing, he explained, was to find the right place for her. Sometimes she was kept beneath a bed, other times in a strategic corner. But most often, she rested on top of the wardrobe. For me, her presence was a kind of comfort, even fun. But for my sister Carmelita, it was pure terror. She never entered the room alone, convinced that the pale little figure followed her everywhere, even though she had only seen her once. She was our eldest sister, the firstborn. I discovered her story much later. She had arrived one cold morning, too early, trembling, fragile. They tried to warm her tiny body with hot water bottles and blankets. Isabel, who was to be her godmother, described her as looking like a faded almond resting on lace pillows. But she was too delicate, too weak. She began to die almost immediately. My father baptized her quickly, then spent hours by her cradle, unable to accept the truth. No one could persuade him to bury her. Instead, in his desperation, he placed her body into a glass jar filled with a strange chemical solution of his own making, perhaps spirits mixed with caustic soda. He sealed the jar in a crimson case and hid it in the wardrobe. From then on, she remained with us. Every year, my father would refresh the liquid, carefully tending to the fragile body inside. Perhaps he thought it safer for his daughters to rest preserved in jars than to face the dangers of the world. It was our family secret. Only a few outsiders ever discovered it, and none remained close to us afterward. First came the shock, then suspicion, and finally whispered gossip about our strange customs. Still, the secret bound us together. Time passed. We grew older. Our parents were gone, but she remained, and so did the problem of where to keep her. In one old mansion we rented, a ruin riddled with cracks, we decorated the gaps with plates, ribbons, and painted flowers. In the back garden, where others might have kept chickens, we planted a lush American-style lawn with roses and vines, a pergola, and everything to satisfy our dream of a grand residence. The house looked cheerful, but odd things kept happening. Sudden collapses, flickering lights, breaking glass. The maids whispered that the ghost of the child in the jar roamed the neighborhood. The rumors grew unbearable. Everyone gossiped, until the only one left with a spotless reputation was the very child they whispered about. 3 years had passed without changing the liquid in her jar. She seemed to have sunk in boredom to the bottom, surrounded by a yellowed haze. Finally, we decided to bury her in the garden. We marked the spot with marigolds and a small cross, as if it were the grave of a canary. Now, once again, we've moved to another house. But I can't forget that little grave. I wonder if anyone tends to it. Does anyone still see her playing with the doves at dusk? When I look at the crimson case that kept her safe for 20 years, my heart fills with nostalgia. Like those who keep an empty birdcage, I feel the sadness of absence. She was my childhood, my silent companion,